Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canam Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. The executive producer is in the building. She's kind of groggy, just waking up from a nap. So we're going to let her sleep one off. Need your good girl, yeah. Oh yeah, that feels good. Oh yeah. He's a good puppy. She's a good girl. Oh yeah, I know you're tired. You can go back to sleep. So anyhow, it's a Canam Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. This is a missing person segment, and this is a continuation on the Amnesia series. Now, I'm kind of critical of myself, and if something's not interesting, I'm not even interested. And honestly, this Amnesia has intrigued me a lot. It could answer a lot of questions about what's going on in the missing 411 world. For starters, and I'm not trying to push you to read the book, but I wish you would. You could go to your local library and get it and read it, or you can get it from me at NABSsearch.com, like North America. NABSsearch.com, go to the online store. The story is about a series of disappearances of healthy men, many of them athletic, many of them super educated, and they disappear. And there's a period of time, and they're later found in a body of water. I found this time after time after time. Sometimes they were found, sometimes they were never found. If they were found, weird stuff happened around it. Now, one of the stories tonight fits right dead center. It's a 10x in that book. And one of them, you're going to see the association. So let's start off. Yeah, don't yawn so loud. You're waking the people up. Grab a cup of Joe, some nice cup of tea. Get your bear claw. French cruller, almond croissant. Here we go. First case involves a man named Robert Comeau. Now Robert, right here. This is Robert. 42 years old, went missing June 28th, 1974. He was married to a lady named Annette and had 3 kids. Now, he was the owner of a laundromat that burned to the ground in February of 74, about 4 months earlier. June 28th, 1974, Comeau disappears. Here's the story. He's last seen driving his car. Yeah, we all hear you. In Moncton, New Brunswick. He's driving his car. Then late that night, his car is found run down the embankment of a river, the Shydick River, and nearly into the water. The police felt he had to be in the river. They came across the car, they ordered a massive search, and they sealed off the area. They ran the license plate, they know it came back to, they called his wife, she said, yeah, he was driving the car. I thought he was going to be home pretty soon. Good enough for the police. They call out a full search and rescue, and they're going to go through that Shydick River. So the following day, June 29th, 2 dive teams arrive at the river. Multiple people, police and fire, are using grappling hooks on the side of the river, see if they can pull Robert off the bottom. Family hadn't heard from him. Highly unusual, very reliable. And in the police's words, they were positive he is there. June 30th, the search continues. Police aren't finding anything. It's just getting stranger and stranger, and nobody can figure this out. The Shydick River isn't that big. It's a good-sized river, but it's not that big. Police figured that they could find him in 3 days. Now, he had 3 kids and a wife, and Annette was going crazy, looking for her husband, wondering what happened. Into the 2nd day, they hadn't found him. It was looking real gloomy. July 1st, rather. Police had combed the river thoroughly. Dive teams for 3 days. They found no body. Grappling hooks hadn't found anybody. The family was distraught, didn't know what to do. Now, I've been around families like this. You don't want to give up. Because once you give up, there's no hope. So families tend to keep believing until either a body's found or until something convinces them in their mind that it's over. And that's a hard hurdle to go over. So now, July 1st, the police give up the search. Now, let's go back 1 day to June 30th. Robert Comeau, the missing man, he wakes up and he's in Bangor, Maine, sitting in a restaurant. You heard that right. Bangor, Maine, sitting in a restaurant. Well, how could that be? And where's Bangor in relationship to Moncton? So, here's Moncton. If any of you guys watched Oak Island, that's down in here. Bangor, Maine, over here. It's about 423 kilometers or 262 miles from Moncton to Bangor. And a lot of rural area there. And it's all along the Bay of Fundy. Right through here. Now, Moncton, he disappeared as his car almost went into the river. So he's essentially right next to the water. And Bangor is surrounded by water in the Bay of Fundy. Water. Water. How many times have you heard this? I hate to beat a dead horse, but I don't think the horse is dead, if you know what I mean. So he wakes up in a restaurant. He originally had no idea who he was, how he got there. He was really confused. He later said that he woke up and he had $80 of money in his pocket, but no wallet. So he left the restaurant, and just down the street he found a rooming house. And he was exhausted. He didn't know why, but he rented a room and decided to rest. He was hoping that his memory would catch up with him, which is reasonable. I'd be scared. I wouldn't even want to be walking around. He didn't know where he was. So for 2 weeks, he stayed right around that rooming house. And then he got frustrated. And he went to a Sunday Mass at St. John's Parish in Bangor. He waited till the Mass had ended, and he approached Father Jack O'Hare. He explained to the father he didn't know who he was, where he was, and he needed help. Father said, "Sit down, my son. I will take care of you." And the father called Bangor police. Well, a patrolman responded, sat with Robert, wrote down everything he could in a missing persons report, called the detective division, explained what he had, and just like every patrolman, I mean, if I would have been a young patrolman and saw something like this, I'm not sure I would believe it. You're not really trained on how to deal with something like this. I would have been very respectful because I wouldn't have had any proof that he was faking it. And I could put myself in that person's position and think how damn scary it would be to be in a strange town around strange people and having a complete block on my memory. It scared the heck out of me. Well, the detectives interview him, and they figure out, I think this is real. And they do something very smart. They fill out a teletype, and they're still using teletypes in '74. And they put out a regional missing persons alert with all the physical knowledge that they could get off of Robert: height, weight, complexion, approximate age, blah, 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 and that he's found in Bangor. Okay. The next day, a Fredericton detective is going over teletypes. He starts to read this coming out of the police there in America. He says, damn, that sure sounds like that missing person we had in Moncton. Could it be? I mean, everyone thinks he's dead in the river, but could he be? Well, he contacts an RCMP administrator, explains what he has. And then the RCMP made a call to Annette Comeau and said, we aren't sure, but we think Bangor police may have your husband. Oh my gosh. I'm sure she just about fainted from that knowledge, from pure ecstasy and joy. So she gets in her car and she drives to Bangor. She gets to the police station and she walks up, and it's Robert. Well, Robert didn't recognize Annette. He didn't even recognize his mom or his kids. But 4 months later, after this incident, he gave an interview. And he said that his memory was very slowly coming back. He said one of the last things he remembers is being in the car and a hitchhiker walking up and touching the door. He says he doesn't remember what the hitchhiker looked like. Doesn't remember if he got in. Doesn't really remember anything other than that. But he did tell his wife that he wasn't even 100% sure he was driving the car that crashed over the embankment. So let's think about that statement for a second. If he wasn't driving the car that went over the embankment, who was? Or was anybody? Was he removed from the car as it was going down the street? I don't know. So Robert had a business that burned up, a laundromat. Well, he stated that he established a new business renting AV equipment. Says the business was going well, and he's very slowly coming back to life. He stated that it was very frustrating living a life and not knowing what happened in part of it. And this almost identical statements are made by all of these victims about their blank space in their mind. And I'm sorry, to me, the cases are so similar and there's so many identical things happening that it has to be something surreal that is going on. I'll leave that at that. All right. The next case is a whopper. As if Robert Comeau's case isn't a whopper. Next incident involves a Dr. Harold Waugh, 31 years old, went missing March 17th, 1921. Now hold your taters for a second, because I'm going to tell you something. There was a detective in New York City, and I've talked about this guy before. I admire him greatly. Detective Gannon. He was working missing persons in New York up until just maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And he started to find bodies in the water, rivers and things in New York, of missing people. He said, none of this makes sense. How did they get in the water? What are they doing in the water? And if they fell in the water here, they should end up downstream, but they're being upstream, which would be impossible naturally. So that's really what got me onto studying this. His recollections of New York cases and things I read about him in various newspapers. Brilliant detective. Well, Dr. Waugh went missing March 17, 1921. He was married, lived at 325 West 83rd Street. Keep that in the back of your mind. He served in the World War, was a first lieutenant in the dental corps from 1917 to 1919. He graduated in 1912 from the College of Dental Oral Surgery in New York. Smart man. And he was a 1909 graduate of Swarthmore College, and he lettered in 3 sports: football, basketball, and track. He had a dental practice in New York City at 133 West 72nd Street. Think about what I just told you about this man. And then think about what I told you about the profiles in this book. Uncanny. Young, very athletic, brilliant, smart, college educated. That's what's in that book right there. And now I'm telling you another story. Well, on March 17th, Dr. Waugh, many times after work, would go to his boat club. He was a member of the Interstate Boat Club on Dickman Street in New York, on the Hudson. And what he'd do is he'd take out a canoe, and it was part of his exercise program, and he'd row the Hudson River. So here's what he does. This is the Hudson. This is Harlem. This is Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights, Fort George. Here's Dickman Street. Takes a canoe out. He's going to row across towards New Jersey. Probably had done it 50 times in the last 6 months. Wasn't a big deal. Nobody even gave it 2 craps. Okay, there he goes. Yeah, he does that every day. So he took the canoe out and he's rowing it across. Other members were doing other things right on the bank, and they're watching, and he's about 2/3 of the way across the river. And then coming on him quickly is a big oil tanker. His friends are watching and they're saying, uh-oh, this doesn't look good. This tanker's getting real close to him quickly. And friends, you can't row fast enough in a canoe to get out of their way. That's how bad it is. His friends say that they lost sight of him, and this tanker made a U-turn in the river. Very unusual. And then it makes another U-turn. Super unusual. And then it takes off going upstream. Nobody could see Dr. Waugh on the water anymore. And he didn't return that night. And when he didn't return that night, people at the club believed that this tanker hit him and left the scene, and that he's dead somewhere in the Hudson. Well, remember what I told you about Detective Gannon in New York? Many of the cases that he worked involved the Hudson River in strangeness. Hold your taters. So he disappears on March 17th. March 18th, the club's canoe washes up near the Columbus Yacht Club at the foot of 86th Street. And it was half filled with water and slightly damaged. This reinforced everyone's belief that the doctor got plowed by this ship, maybe even cut up into chunks by the prop, and is down there at fish bait somewhere at the bottom of the Hudson. But Harold's father was a very prominent dentist himself in New York City. And he organized a big search of the Hudson for his son, as any loving father would have done. So the 19th, he had about 30 people out there on the water along the banks looking for anything. March 20th, another search along the banks, on the river. The police came out. They interviewed club witnesses who believed he was hit by the boat and drowned. The New York City Marine Unit came over. They were trying to identify the ship that hit him, if that is what happened. March 21st was the last day of the search, and the formal missing person report on Dr. Harold Waugh was filed with the New York City Police Department. Now, Dr. F. Austin Waugh, his father, was horribly depressed and devastated. He loved his son beyond belief. Trust me, I know that. I know that feeling. And to think that he had lost a son that had been such a phenomenal scholar and athlete would devastate anyone. Three months later, June 1921, Rankers Insurance had a policy on Dr. Harold Waugh for $10,000, a life insurance policy, and they paid that off to Mrs. Waugh. That was in June 1921. Now, you think about 9 months later, Dr. Harold Waugh says he awoke in Kansas City, Missouri. He's been gone for a year. He just wakes up. He said he had Canadian money in his pockets. He says he was wearing laborer's kind of clothes. And he said from the time he woke up, he had no memory. And then it slowly, very slowly started to come back to him. He said within a week, he started to remember friends from college. And he had one best friend in college, and he had read in the paper about supposedly him being dead. And then he remembered who he was. And then he contacted this friend from college and said, "I'm not dead. Why are they saying I'm dead?" And they said, "Well, you're married too." And he goes, "To who?" And they start looking for his wife. This made national news. The day it made national news, Rankers Insurance sent a private detective to Dr. Waugh's location in Kansas City and interviewed him and confirmed it was him. Well, Rankers had already done their homework. They knew that his wife had moved, established a new residency in Los Angeles. And in April 1922, Dr. Waugh was finally able to make contact with his wife in Los Angeles. By this point, his mind was coming back faster. He stated he still had no idea where he'd been for a year. And this was in late April 1922. May 11th, 1922. Dr. Harold Waugh's dad, the man who put the search up for his son, committed suicide in New York. Friends and family said that he was so devastated by losing his son and confused by the turmoil of his son being found and the amnesia verdict and not seeing his son that he couldn't take it. And he killed himself. I read that and I thought, his son is found 1 month and he kills himself the next month. That's really odd. Well, the following month, Dr. Harold Waugh and his wife paid back the $10,000. There was never any hint of criminal charges. There was never any hint of a crime. There was never a report. Let me clear this up. There was a theory laid out by police a couple months after they found Dr. Waugh. And the theory is a doozy. Here's what they said. They said they believed the oil tanker hit him and knew they hit him. And that's why they made 2 U-turns. They saw the body laying on the water. They went down and got him and pulled him up on the ship. And then, this is the theory, they went towards Canada and dumped the body on a beach. That's how Dr. Waugh had Canadian money in his pocket. That's a doozy. Because if that was the case, he would have been found by somebody on the beach and reported to the RCMP, and it would have been huge news in Canada. And there was no news about anybody being found on a beach with amnesia, being hit by a ship, or with extensive injuries. None. Gone 1 year. Where was he? Detective Gannon, when he was investigating these type of crimes, knew that something very strange was happening. He kept his police demeanor about him, but he still knew something was happening. Now, in this case, do I believe that the tanker hit him? I think that's a very good chance. Very good chance. Do I think that they pulled him up on the ship and went towards Canada? No. And why is that? Well, friends, when a big ship's going down a river, people watch. Just the way it is. And when they start doing strange things like U-turns, people really watch. And if they were pulling a body up on that boat, somebody on one of those banks would have seen this. Nobody did. Nobody reported it. And even years later, nobody on that crew ever reported it. And every one of them would have been complicit in a crime if they hadn't reported it. So do I think the ship did that? I don't think so. I think it's something else. And besides that, the dentist had amnesia for a year. Now, that's not an outrageous amount of time when you look at some of these amnesia cases. I've read of some at 12, 15 years. So I truly don't know what happened. But it fits the mold for what we've talked about. Water, intellect, age bracket, disappearance, gone for days. How could you ignore this? Now, a lot of you said, well, Dave, I hope you keep up with the Trucker series. I'm sorry, in my mind, this is as good, if not better, than the Trucker series, because the cases line up with each other so well. And I hope that some of you recognize this and share these stories with your friends and online, because social media needs to hear about this. I'd be grateful if you did share those. All of your comments are great. I appreciate those. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up. And I've attached a list of a lot of my a lot of the videos I made this past year. And we grouped them together so they're easier to follow, like all the Bigfoot classes and all the missing runners classes, etc. They're all grouped together, so you can follow them. I wish you would. In the meantime, we're in a new year. This is the kindness revolution. We need to be kind. kind to the people that we love, and even the ones we don't know, because it costs us nothing to be kind. A smile costs nothing. I appreciate you very much. Huck is laying here, snoring. If I put the camera on her, you could almost see her nostrils. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So anyhow, be kind, be safe, and I hope to see you soon. Paulides out.